Welcome back to Yin and Yang, the podcast. This is episode 67 with Kelly
Hello.
Hebestreit. Hebestreit.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's the perfect pronunciation. Wow, I have to applaud you for that. That's
Thank you.
really
I
good.
I I Googled it and then I realized, oh, it's the same as your Instagram handle, Herbie Stripes, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very similar kind of pronunciation. I think that's where the username came from. It was like middle school or something. No, I think it was like 14 when I decided that. But anyway, that was perfect, spot on. Very, very good.
Hebestreit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And that's a coming from a German lineage, I assume that name.
hmm
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
hmm
So yeah, Kelly and we connected back at the Taiwanese American Film Festival years ago. I want to say
Mm.
maybe I guess when Trump got elected around then. It's like
Yeah, it
yeah.
was around then.
Yeah, because this podcast started around then. So we've known each other
Mm.
since I guess the start of this podcast, and then we haven't reconnected in a minute, but it's good to reconnect now. And I've been following Kelly's work on Instagram. She had a solo show called Satellite back in HK a few years back, and
hmm
with which was like a photo slash art installation. I want to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
And some there's some was there audio of it as well, or is it
yeah,
mostly
there
visual?
was. So it was like that was yeah, my first show was a couple years ago. At the time I had released a zine, and I was sharing a space with some friends, where like it was in a very, very old industrial building that apparently the story goes that like it used to be government owned, and then the landlord somehow managed to take the government to court and then won the rights to this building, but
Hmm.
somehow because they had won that court case, it meant that they were no longer allowed to have like a real address or something like that. It's always very hard to find the space, but it's a very old building, and we at the time rented two floors, and the like higher floor was the kind of art space that we were running, and we had, I mean, literally this is how it went. I didn't feel particularly like engaged in wanting to put on a show, but I had the zine coming out, and one of the sort of co renters of the space said, "Oh, well, we have like a week or so's open slot. Why don't you do a show?" And so I felt
Hmm.
like, okay, I've never done that before. Why not do that? And it was literally like few weeks of just every morning just like sleeping in the gallery, and then just sort of like, okay, what are we installing today, and just doing a lot of like different kinds of installing. So I had, yeah, a music piece I commissioned from a really good friend of mine. I did some like, I don't want to say sculpture, but I guess sculpture, and a few other like little installation pieces for a very immersive space.
Hmm.
And I was really proud of the show, though at the time I was kind of too tired to appreciate it.
Oh
But
yeah.
the concept that I wanted to really kind of explore at that time, specifically with the show, just to make the zine more of an expansive experience, was I really liked the idea of kind of a private spectacle. So after we did the opening, I opened the space up for like private 30-minute viewings. So a person could
Hmm.
come and enjoy the space fully by themselves for like half an hour, and just have like a very kind of personal experience viewing the work. And I got a
Hmm.
lot of good feedback from that. I actually had a total stranger come. You had to like book it in advance. So I don't know how she found out about it. Like this name popped up in my little booking app, and I was like, do I know this person? And I asked the other people in the space, like, do you know who this is? And they didn't know. But she, so total stranger, she gave me the best advice for it, or the best suggestion after, which is, oh, I wish I could like see more shows like this where I can just have my own time privately to a space, so that like I don't feel rushed or pressured to have to go through all the work and then get out because there are too many people. So she really enjoyed like that kind of private experience, and so that show taught me a lot, and I'd like to do more in the future. But yeah, that was a really, really special time, I have to say, and it was a nice way to kind of expand my practice in a way that was very challenging, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, that process.
That's dope. Yeah, I looked at your Instagram, um, and the stories. You had some writing too as well, which I liked. Like he didn't take his shoes off, so I think he's gonna break up with
Oh
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there were, so I mean, basically the show and the zine was speaking on like a heartbreak situation where it was COVID. I mean, we had broken up and then COVID hit. And I remember myself and a few friends, we like isolated and then decided to go to Joshua Tree, which is also like in and of itself a very kind of cliche thing to do. But it was my first time
How dare
going.
you? Yeah.
It was my first time going, and it was a really interesting experience because that was also my first time going to a real desert. I mean, for me, having not grown up in America, growing up in Hong Kong, like most of the kind of climates and environments that I've visited are all either very tropical or very I don't know, very urban. And so it was
Mm.
my first time experiencing a real desert. And that like week and a bit was a very interesting and very healing experience for me because I felt like I was trying to like run away from that situation that was happening, and then realized I couldn't really do that. It's not really
Mm.
possible to run from that, such a personal experience. And so the thing that you were like mentioning, so I had a little installation with I don't remember the name, but do you know like when you go to a temple and then they have those like shaky cups and then they have the numbers in there, and then you shake it and then you have to like wait for a number to drop, and then you pick a fortune. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
coordinating with the number. And so I had that similar concept at the show. I asked a friend of mine, Terry, who's a really, really talented designer, and I don't want to say carpenter, but he works a lot with wood and like wood materials. But he found this like old cup, and he made these really beautiful and quite like I want to say very ergonomic kind of like handles that were supposed to represent like sand and being in Joshua Tree. So kind of like a sand cup, and then you shake
Mm.
it, and instead of you getting a fortune, you're getting like a kind of a little handout with a real message that was sent between me and my past significant other. And so that one mentioning shoes was, it was a message on the day that he came to my house to break up with me. I was
Oh.
talking to one of my best friends, and he came into my house and he didn't take his shoes off. I remember texting my best friend being like, I think he's here to break up with me because he didn't take his shoes off. And she was like, oh no, maybe he's in a rush. But you know, like in my Chinese brain, I was like, nah, this is not only a disrespect, but this is something like is saying something. And I thought it was a very like funny but also kind of sad
Yeah.
takeaway from that experience. So I had to include it. That was a very like, I got a lot of interesting and like kind of shocked responses from that one.
I
So
mean,
was it true
it
though?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
Yeah.
have the message on my phone. I can show you later.
I'm not I'm
Yeah,
sure the message
it
was
did
true, but
happen.
did the boyfriend or ex-boyfriend come and break up with you that day?
He
Yeah.
did. He did.
Did. Oh.
Yeah. It just you know, you don't take your shoes off. What's the reason for that? Like you're in a hurry, I guess, right? And prior to that, he'd always taken his shoes off in my house. But anyway, yeah,
Well,
it
I
just
mean that yeah,
Sacrilegious.
I'm sorry, I'm in disgust right now. He didn't take his shoes off. Yeah.
but
How dare
it's a funny takeaway because like it can mean so many different things. And I didn't realize at the time that it could be kind of a like in a way something like a beautiful sentiment where it's something that really, really drove a lot of inspiration for that whole show, and also largely for the zine, where this thing occurred, and because it also sort of hit a like cultural bone, I guess, it also kind of like made me reminisce about the time in a different way. Like, I guess it also made me kind of reflect on a lot of the relationships, and not just like romantic, but also friendships that I had when I was living in America that felt very like unmatched culturally. And so, yeah, it was anyway, that was a very, very funny, but also kind of a nice thing that I still think about just as a point of like reflection, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it does speak also to your intersection of cultures, right? Like you're writing that message in English, but it's a very Chinese, Asian, East Asian custom to take off your shoes coming into a house, right? So I think it does speak kind of like to your intersection of your own background. I mean, which if it's cool, I like to get into. So
Go
just
for
for our
it, yeah.
listeners, a zine is a magazine, right? A magazine, art magazine. Okay. And then for your, so currently you're doing photography, you're part of the Zaazaaaa collective, is that correct?
Oh, that's right. So it's don't ask me who came up with that name. We very much, because it's 9 of us, and we just sort of went with the democratic process, which is someone makes a suggestion and like everyone votes on it. I don't know where it came from, but so previously I had been sharing a space with a few of those friends and a few other people, but that kind of fell apart. And so the Zaazaaaa collective is like a giant kind of, I don't want to say co-working space, but just a space where we do shoots and we have each other's workshops there. And so we're basically just a collective of artists and creative people from different mediums and different disciplines. Some of us being strangers, some of us being very good friends, just kind of occupying a space and doing work together. So we wanted to name our collective something, because it's like a very kind of, well, at least I think, a very unique kind of setup where it's also partially a commune because a few of them live there. And myself and Terry, who I mentioned earlier, we have like our own workshops in there. So Terry has his wood workshop, and I have my black and white and color darkroom in there as well. And so it's just kind of like, it's like it's an immersive and quite addictive kind of space, because it also feels like a place that you live in. So we have our offices in there and our workshops and whatnot. So that's what the Zaazaaaa collective is. Yeah.
That's awesome. And this is all in Hong Kong in
Yeah, it's all in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Nice. Great.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess if we could start from the beginning. Yeah. Oh, Dan, sorry, did you have a question?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So so I met you in America, but you grew up in Hong Kong. So yeah, could you tell us like maybe an introduction of your background? Your mom is
Sure.
Taiwanese, your father is German.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, this is a very like, it's a very long story, but I was technically born in Germany, but then at the age of like 1 or 2, my family, then my parents like emigrated to Hong Kong for my dad's business, because he works in textiles, and at the time, like being in Hong Kong for textiles was very much like the move. The family business for generations was always in Germany, and he felt like he wanted to bring it to Hong Kong. So I grew up in Hong Kong, went to high school there. I actually went to an Australian school. It was an international school. I was there for 14 years. I don't know why we decided for me to go there. I have no Australian lineage, but it kind of it added to this very like mishmash experience that I had growing up, of being very just like being in not just a place, but also in like a school setting where I'm experiencing a lot of different like cultural ideals, and also meeting a lot of different people from different backgrounds. So a very like, I guess, diverse kind of upbringing. And then after I was in Hong Kong, I then moved to Germany for a year. Didn't really enjoy it that much, and then decided to move to LA. So yeah, my background is my mom's from Taiwan and my dad is German. And yeah, that's my background.
Yeah. So then,
Are, are your
yeah, sorry,
parents
Dan, go
still
ahead.
are your parents still in Hong Kong?
My dad is in Hong Kong. My mom moved back to Taiwan actually. I'm at my mom's house right now, because I'm visiting her at the moment. But my mom was in Hong Kong for a very long time until she decided to move back. I often ask my dad actually, like, why would you stay in Hong Kong for all these years, or what is like making you want to stay here? And he always just says, why would I leave? Like, I have everything here. And when he said that, I realized like Hong Kong is honestly very, very accommodating to expats, and particularly just Western people living there. Not just because of our colonial history, but also I have to say, like, you can comfortably get around only speaking English, which I personally think is not a very good thing. At least in terms of like not like having like you being more open to learning about the culture of the country that you're in is optional versus like a requirement of moving.
Mm,
So it's it's something that my dad feels like, yeah, it's a very convenient and comfortable place, so why would I leave? And yeah, Hong Kong is definitely that, incredibly easy to settle in and very, very, very comfortable for many, many reasons.
or like so high school, Australian high school, then you went to Germany for a year, and then you went to LA. Did you went to LMU, is that correct? Or
Yeah,
uh,
I first started at PCC and then I transferred to LMU. I actually had a really, really good time at PCC. I have to say that was
Pasadena City College, or
yeah,
yeah.
I had a really, really good time there. And then when I transferred to LMU, it felt very like foreign and very strange. It was definitely less diverse. Definitely
Ah,
diverse. I have to say that. But when I was at LMU, I also did a kind of study abroad program. So I also lived in Tokyo for 8 months.
Oh,
nice.
And yeah, it was a really good time because I made sure that I had a very open schedule. I picked the minimum amount of classes and I just went out every single day. But I think that that's also, in a way, I think it's a very important part of living in a new place, right? You get out there and you explore and you're curious as much as possible. And also, like, I mean, it takes a lot to be a new person in a new place, especially when you don't really speak the language and you want to like meet people or communicate in some way. Like, that was also another good round of, I guess, like practice for me to just learn to be a bit brave with it. Because prior to that I was also in Germany, right? And so learning German was also very, very like intense and quite scary at times. But I have to say, after having moved around a bit, it was good for me to have like had that practice to just kind of face your fears with like making mistakes when you're speaking, or just like, not fully understanding but still being curious and open-minded. Yeah, so that was a really, really, really good time, definitely.
Mm. So then, would you say your strongest language is English or Cantonese?
It's probably English because it's my first language, but I have to say, like, when I'm in Hong Kong, I try to speak more Cantonese, or just I try to practice Cantonese as much as possible. So much so that like when I came back to Taiwan this time, I noticed that my accent was really off. So my mom was like saying, "Why are you speaking Mandarin like this? Like you sound like a Cantonese person." I'm like, "Oh my God," it's like it's really bouncing around. And so yeah, like I guess when I speak Mandarin, I also have to kind of like, practice a bit, like, oh, I'll make sure I get the tones right again. Like the
Mm.
Cantonese keeps slipping out. Or there are even times where I will mistake certain words. Like for example, I recently had, like, I went to a cafe with a friend and I kept saying my dan like
Yeah.
instead of like 想要付钱, like when you want to pay, like 买单 is the way that you like ask to pay in Hong Kong. And I
Right.
kept saying 买单, and Lane looked very confused. I was like, oh, sorry. I had to keep correcting myself. So yeah, there are times where like Cantonese will slip out every so often.
Wait,
That's
because
interesting. I thought my Dan would be Mandarin as well.
well, it's like
I guess you
买单.
can.
Yeah.
It's 买单, and then I guess
买单.
in Cantonese it's 买单.
It's
or
like 买单.
买单.
It's like
Oh,
the
okay.
dan is like said differently. 买单, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are quite a lot of similarities actually. Like even if you say like 很麻烦, like very annoying, like 好麻烦, it's just sort
Yeah.
of the tone, right? Yeah, which I have to say, like I tell myself like, oh yeah, I'm learning Cantonese, but to be honest, it's just I'm just using words that I know sound very similar in both languages and just like changing up the tone.
Yeah, I
That's my
mean,
cheat sheet for Cantonese.
I'm in Japan, so like I know exactly what you're going. I just Japaneseify if I don't have no idea how to say it. So like
Yeah, or you just say
yeah.
like English and then with like with like
Japanese accent.
katana, right?
Yeah. Like photo club. Oh, photo club, you know, like
Club. Yeah. Yeah, there's even like the word that trips me out the most in Japanese is arbeito, because arbeit means work in German.
Right.
Yes.
And so I'm like, where did this come from? It's very, very interesting. I don't know how they decided on that.
There are so many Japanese borrowed words that are like that. Like
Yeah.
zubon. Zubon is the word for pants, but I think it's Portuguese.
Yeah.
Or like
Casa also is
yeah.
umbrella,
Yeah.
which is like house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tosokan, like 图书馆 also. I think Korean also like tosokan, like library sounds
Similar. Yeah,
It's very
similar.
similar, yeah.
Yeah.
And then number 3,
Borrowing.
san.
San, yeah.
Yeah,
True,
sign that
true.
gets yeah. And then four sometimes it
Yeah,
sounds like
she.
death. Yeah,
Su.
she that sounds like death in Japanese.
Say.
That's why they also have yon as another way to pronounce
Oh.
four in Japanese, I guess. I don't know if that's the reason why, but yeah, most people prefer yon instead of saying she because it sounds like death. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, a
So
lot of
when was like your kind of like foray into like the arts? Because your family your dad did textiles. What did your mom do, I guess, growing up? Or like yeah.
So she was a stay-at-home mom. She raised us at home, which I'm very thankful for, that she like gave us that time and was like attentively there at home. I think prior to that, prior to getting married, she worked in, I think, HR or something. So my family definitely didn't really most people don't really work creative jobs at all. So in a way that kind of made me even like seek out creativity and art or whatsoever more urgently when I was a kid, just because I felt like, oh well, like my family's not that into it, so I guess it's just me who's into it. Okay, it's just me alone doing all this. So but I had to say I had a lot of like friends growing up who had very good taste and who were just very curious about different kinds of like mediums, and like aside from just like very traditional art. I mean, for one, even though I have a lot of thoughts about it, like textiles, fashion, I have to say fashion is also a very good kind of entryway into seeing the kinds of like expansive ways in which art can exist. I mean, if we were to look at it from a very orthodox or a very like kind of, I don't want to say corporate, but I guess kind of a corporate like perspective, I think the most like easy sort of entryway into it now would be, for example, like LV did the Kusama collaboration. Aside from just like using her kind of very token dot pattern, but also seeing how they've like shown sort of mini exhibitions in their stores. So I have to say, as a kid, like being in a fashion family was very important in many ways, because I also became curious about like creativity and art from that angle first. So I was reading a lot of like fashion books, learning a lot about different designers, and then going from there. So like, okay, I'll see, let's see, for example, like Alexander McQueen, and seeing how revolutionary and innovative he was as a designer. And then going from there, then seeing, oh, okay, well, these musicians and these DJs would collaborate with him as well. And then going down that rabbit hole. And then, oh, from there, just like, you know, sort of picking up the scent, I guess, and just sort of going in that direction. Yeah, so like fashion was a very the very first start I had in kind of learning about ways in which you can be creative and ways in which you can like channel your creative energy. Yeah, that was the first thing I kind of was interested in at a young age, and then it went from there.
Was that around like maybe elementary or junior high school, you would say? Or it's always been a part of your life since you can remember?
I think it's always kind of been a part of my life, but I think not in a way in which, let's say, like a very artist's family kind of operates. Like my family is still very, very traditional, excuse me, and also in a way quite like conservative. So like my dad and my parents, they still have like their own kind of ideas or like prejudices towards like an artist's life, or about like creativity and this and that, sort of, I think in a very traditional mindset of, oh, well, this is something that maybe Western people can do, but for us as like an Asian family, that's not really a path that we would suggest you to take, because it's not an easy way to make money or this and that. Which is interesting because my dad being German, I thought he would have been a bit more supportive in that area, but he's also very equally quite traditional in that mindset. So yeah, it's like, how to say, fashion, at least that entryway, that entry point, was always kind of present in my life. Like that door was always kind of there to be opened, but only because there was that like textile background, and textiles is a lot more technical. It's more to do with like manufacturing than, let's say, high fashion, for example. But in Hong Kong, I mean, people are definitely quite, shall we say, highly interested in brands and appearing a certain way. So you are, I think, constantly being like exposed to that type of imagery and that type of like lifestyle. It's just always there, even when you're a kid. I mean, to give kind of an extension of that, like I'd always heard that America was like the country of like the biggest shopping malls and just like mall culture. And then I get to America and I'm like, oh no, this is nothing like Hong Kong. Like Hong Kong, I have to say, their mall culture is on a completely different level. Like families will just go to a shopping mall to hang out on a weekend. Some apartment buildings are connected to shopping malls. There are even MTR, like our subway, MTR stations that are connected to shopping malls. So that very hyper kind of capitalist lifestyle is just always in your face in Hong Kong. So anyway, yeah, it that sort of being in that kind of environment exposed me to a lot of that, like brands and like high fashion and stuff as a young kid. You can't escape it. It's always there.
Right. I think like Taipei is kind of materialistic, but then Hong Kong, it's on like another level of capitalism. That's like late stage capitalism, like super like when I visited, I've only visited a few times. And I the energy, well, I was only coming as a tourist and only for a few days, but the energy was like, oh, I feel a little kind of anxious, here.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't,
I will say like so our our studio, for example, is in a neighborhood that I really, really love because so it's in an area called Tokwawan, which is right next to the like where the old Kai Tak airport used to be. So if you look up any like old pictures of Hong Kong, you'll see like pictures of airplanes landing very, very closely to skyscrapers and buildings. Because historically, yeah, that was the only airport that we had, and it was the most notorious airport, I think, in the world because it was so hard to land. It's not there anymore, but our neighborhood is still very like they say underdeveloped, but I like to say just not really gentrified, which is nice. So it's still a very kind of very low rent and a lot of mom and pop shops. And so the areas that I find myself more drawn to are very reminiscent of old Hong Kong, not just because it's nostalgic in a way, but also because like you feel a very, very strong sense of community in certain areas. And growing up in Hong Kong, like for some reason, I always thought that like that was just not like a thing that you experience in an Asian country. Like you only experience like true neighborhoods in Western countries. Not true at all, but for some reason I had that perception. And so when I then moved back to Hong Kong at a later stage in my life and like made a lot of new friends and connected and reconnected to places that I had like I used to go to and things like that. And then also finding all these little neighborhoods that are like still very reminiscent of old Hong Kong life and also just very, very like culturally and also just in a communal way, very, very like very connected. I mean, if you go to Tokwa Wan, just as an example, you'll see on a lot of these very old buildings, like some neighbors will like have signs outside their house saying like, we don't want developers here, like property developers go away. We don't want you here. Things like that. So there's a kind of interesting solidarity in certain places of Hong Kong that are like that, where it isn't so like tense, like you were saying, or very like anxiety inducing or very disconnected. You still have these types of old neighborhoods that like neighbors still talk to each other. People still know each other's business in a way. But I find myself very like happy to be engaged in that because it also really helps you kind of learn about like an old past life in Hong Kong that you wouldn't possibly know. Yeah, so I forgot what we were talking about
No,
initially,
that's
but
good.
anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we were talking about the capitalism in Hong Kong and
Oh, right.
textiles.
Yeah, so I feel that you see it like in a lot of Hong Kong, definitely, but you still are able to get smaller neighborhoods as well that you know is a lot more about like communal living and like proper neighborhoods, I want to say. So yeah, and considering how small Hong Kong is, it's kind of miraculous that so many different types of, you know, neighborhoods can coexist in one place. So yeah, I really I'm glad I moved back, to be honest. I moved back initially just because of COVID, and also temporarily in the beginning. But I found that I was able to kind of see my hometown from a very different perspective as an adult, and also as an adult who had previously lived in America for so many years. And so I felt like I was coming back with sort of like less weight on my shoulders in a way, and with a bit more of an open mind. And so I've had a really good time in Hong Kong ever since going back, and I decided just like last couple of years that maybe it's time I go back. So yeah, I'm glad I made that choice at this point.
It's a homecoming for you. You're back home, I guess, right?
Yeah, back home. Definitely.
Dan, did you ever live in Hong Kong at all, or you
I
just
never
visited?
lived in Hong Kong. I went there in the early 90s just to visit my dad and my stepmother and my half sister at the time, but I haven't had a chance to go back, and my stepmother's here, so
Right.
Mm.
Because your family has some ties to Hong Kong as well.
yeah, through my stepmother primarily. So
Oh.
someday.
Yeah. So
when
Yeah,
things are
come
normal again.
through.
Yeah, I'll look you up. I'll ask James
Definitely.
because
Definitely.
yeah.
I want to go to Tatantang because
Oh, which one is the question?
I
So many Tang.
I want to go to the original. There's one, I forget what it's called. I just saw the YouTube on it. It was like they said they were the original ones. It's a very small place. Lamphoi. I don't know. I'll look it up.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if you do come, please let me know. There are endless Tangs I can take you to.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, what's a tang for the non-Cantonese speaker here?
It's a tea shop.
Tang is like, yeah, it's like a tea house, but they also serve food, like a lot of dim sum.
Mm.
But Tang is well, actually not really dim sum, to be honest. Tang also like they have how you describe?
Western
Like
foods, like Chinese
yeah,
Western foods.
yeah, but also like the macaroni soups and then
Yes.
also like the omelets. And interestingly, so I didn't know this until I recently went to this restaurant. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a chain restaurant in Hong Kong where they have this like Cantonese take on Western food. So I went with a friend. I didn't know during the colonial period when the British took over, um, as a Chinese person, you were not allowed to go into any Western restaurants or any kind of Western
What?
establishments. You're not allowed to. So
That's
then Hong
fucked
Kong
up.
people were like, okay, screw this. We're going to make our own restaurants. So a lot of what you see of this kind of like Cantonese style Western food came from this colonial history where you were not allowed to even present yourself in these establishments. So yeah, a lot of that type of food, like it's like an interesting little twist. Like it tastes very Chinese, but still like traditionally like a Western dish. Um, yeah, you find a lot of that there. I think Tang probably like those types of dishes probably also have some connection to that history as well, I would
Mm,
say. Yeah.
that's dope.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite one? A favorite Tatantang?
Hmm. To be honest, I do, but it's not because of the quality of the food or anything. It's just because it's our neighborhood one and the
Uh,
ladies there are very nice. There's also a cat in there. Um, which yeah, that's also kind of a Hong Kong phenomenon, is like you have a lot of these old medicine shops and not really tangs, but some restaurants also have cats in them, mostly to keep,
the
mice
mice.
and like
Mm.
rats away. But that's very, very typical. Most, I would say, like old school medicine shops have at least one or two cats in there. So that's always a nice surprise when you go to a yeah,
It's
yeah.
there for pest control. Okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
cute and it's efficient or
Useful.
convenient. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I looked into this because one of our studio mates wants to have a cat in our space. And
Okay.
so our building in Tokwa One is very, very old and there are a lot of rats in there. So
Ah.
apparently you like the cat doesn't even have to do anything. The second a mouse or a rat smells that there is a cat present, it will not go anywhere near the premises because it's like it
Oh.
smells the predator. So it's like the easiest kind of rat management solution is you just get a cat to just like sit on your floor all day and then that's like
Oh.
problem solved. Yeah.
I
Huh.
don't think that's true in America though.
Oh really?
I tell you that because I have two cats
Oh,
and
there's rats.
yeah,
Well,
Maybe
I
their
guess
smell's not strong enough. Their pheromones are not strong enough, or I don't know.
maybe, or they're just fearless. I mean, makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, fearless rats in America. Oh man,
So
scary.
Kelly, growing up, like, was it you have brothers or sisters?
Yeah. I have my younger brother who is 5 years younger than me. We grew up in the same house, and then I have my half sister from my dad and my stepmom, who is 10 years younger than me. So she's like at that interesting age, and I'm like seeing a lot of the old kind of aggressions I dealt with that she's dealing with at that age.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm the oldest. Yeah, eldest daughter syndrome for sure. Yeah.
And growing
is
up, like, would you? Sorry, Dan. Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I
I'm
was
just
just
like
gonna
looking up
ask.
this Tatantang.
Oh, what'd you find?
I'm looking it up right now. I'll let you know.
Okay.
You guys go. I'll
But
tell you.
yeah, I was gonna ask, like, growing up, it's what was spoken in the household, I guess. What language or languages, yeah.
Um, I think 普通话, like all Chinese with my mom. I think I was very fluent in it when I was a kid, but then I went to international school. I think my parents were like, well, she has to be able to speak good English, otherwise she can't go to any good university or anything like that. She can't
Mm,
excel in her school life. So then we would speak a bit of English after I started going to school. My dad would speak a bit of German with me, but my parents separated when I was, I think, 11. But even prior to that, he would speak a bit of German, but not that much. But when I moved to Germany the year after high school, I did really, really intensive tutoring for it. And so I learned really, really quickly. And I also lived in like a very small kind of village setting. So no one spoke any English. So I didn't have that option. Yeah. So I was just tutoring 5 hours a day, 5 days a week.
oh
And I
wow.
learned extremely fast. And I will say the best thing that came out of that was I was finally able to talk to my grandparents who
Oh,
didn't
Oh,
speak any English at all and has never spoken English. They only speak German. So I'm still, as of now, the only sibling who can communicate with my grandparents. Yeah, so
on your dad's
yeah,
side.
strangely they
Okay.
don't speak any English. My婆婆though, she like, I mean, she's amazing. She's like a Shanghai lady who then moved to Taiwan later on. She like, even though Chinese is her, like Mandarin is her first language, she spoke very, very decent English. And I always
Mm,
asked my mom, like, where did she learn this from? Like, where could she have learned this from? And she doesn't know. So my popo was actually quite, she was also very gifted with languages. I don't think she was like a polyglot or anything, but she was very curious about languages, as is my mom. So that's
mm.
still part of the family, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I was super surprised when I was like, oh, gong daigi, and I like you can speak Taiwanese a little bit. Daigi
oh,
gong,
it's a little bit
知道.
lah. I mean, it's like just from watching like cartoons and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like if my mom would like get like angry at me or my brother, she'd be like "gaoging which is like monkey children or something.
Uh,
Yeah, so just a little bit, but I didn't know that it's still so widely spoken in Taiwan.
mm,
I had no idea until I came back this time, and then I like, when I will like be in a shop or in a restaurant, and then I'll hear the tables next to me speaking a bit of like Taiyu, or people
uh,
like, we went to like a flower festival recently and there were so many aunties speaking Taiyu, and I'm like, oh, interesting, cool, people are still speaking it. Yeah.
yeah. I think yeah, Taiwanese has had a resurgence. I think because of national pride, to be honest, in response to like Chinese aggression to Taiwan. So I think
Mm.
the language Taiwanese has had a resurgence, especially since like the sunflower movement when the young
Mm.
Taiwanese people took over. I believe it's called the Parliament Building, I believe.
Mm.
But yeah. So yeah, Dan, before you leave, do you have any thoughts or any questions you want to share? Yeah.
it's a Lan Feng Yun. I don't know where it's.
南风云. Oh, that one is like, is that the one on, I think it must be on Kowloon side. Okay, I will look that up also because I've probably been there at some point.
Yeah,
But okay, I will note this for when you do eventually visit. I will take you there. No
yeah,
problem.
because Lan Feng Yun, it just looked very interesting. And the guy was
Mm.
explaining that he like brews the tea 7 times with a long sock.
Oh,
He cooks it or like boils it and then like pulls it out and then drains it and then like 7 times. I was like, holy crap, I'm willing to pay for that. I don't want to do that at
yeah.
home.
Do they use the like the sock
Yeah,
method?
yeah,
Oh, cool, cool, cool. Wow, okay, I should also go, I
yeah,
guess. 7 times. Wow, that's what's worth the money. That was clean as well. It's also
right,
good.
right. So I was like, oh, I don't think the milk teas in SGB and San Gabriel Valley are anything like that.
Yeah, probably not. I guess not. Unless someone decides to bring it and like teach some people had to do it that way.
Yeah. The
Right.
guy said he was like he the founder, I guess, he just got a bunch of like old tea, or not old, but he got a bunch of teas from different places, or people kept giving him teas, and he would just mix it all together. It wasn't just like one type of tea. So he just like
Oh,
has a bunch of teas in a jar and just like starts brewing it. So
wow.
he says
Okay.
that's why it's so smooth. 7
Yeah.
times. But
Wow. I gotta get that.
my language corner before I go
Mm.
is Hopakwa. Hopakwa is like very nosy. My sister used to tell me that all the time when I ask her questions. Hopakwa
Obakwa.
and
Oh,
Bagua.
opakwa.
Yeah, Hopakwa.
Nosy.
Yeah,
I should tell
nosy.
my mom that. She'll use it for me as well.
She's like, I asked her about her like social life. She's like, Hopakwa. You're Hopakwa.
Opakwa.
Are you
Like,
nosy?
and
Mm.
I asked her for the origin of that idea. And because the Bagua is like all sides, right? Eight sides, the trigram. Bagua
Mm.
is like
Oh, the bagua. Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, so from all sides.
Um,
But
oh,
she's not for sure. She doesn't know for sure, but she used to say that to me all the time when I asked her about her social life.
Oh, cool.
Bagua.
Wow, that's a good term to like if you have an auntie in your life who's really nosy.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah.
but I'm gonna get ready to go pick up my wife. It's very nice meeting you, Kelly.
Nice
I-
meeting you as well.
I'll definitely look you up. If we go back to Hong Kong, I'm sure we will because my stepmother, she's gonna move back. Her whole family's back there, so she's gonna move back. She's planning on moving back, and I'll have a base of operations, which is important.
Okay.
Mm.
Got you. Got you.
Otherwise, I have to like squat in your studio, the
Yeah,
Zaazaaaa.
no problem. I mean, it's a commune after all. You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care of
All right,
yourself.
take care,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 See ya. Yeah. Let's see. I think yeah, we could probably just talk for a little bit more if that's cool. How's your time looking?
No, I'm fine. No worries. My mom went to like buy some groceries, so we are good. No problem.
No? And you visited Tokyo recently too, yeah?
Yeah, I visited. I was supposed to go with one of my old roommates from LA, but um I think like the embassy in China, because she was in China for a bit prior.
Mm.
The embassy in China, I guess, was really delayed with giving her visa, so she couldn't make it in the end. Um, but oh, it's cuckoo clock. No wait for it to pass. Um, but I decided to go anyway because I hadn't
Okay.
been in so many years and I had friends there that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Um,
I
uh,
actually, is there a clock? I can't even hear it. Is there something going on?
you can't hear it really. It's like a cuckoo. Do you hear
Okay, I can
it?
hear it now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, interestingly, cuckoo clocks are quite a staple in most German households. That was
Huh.
the one weird thing I had in my popo's house was like when my dad married my mom, he gave my gongong and my popo like a old German cuckoo clock as a
Mm.
gift. And so for years that cuckoo clock was in their home. But anyway, yeah, so I was so back to Tokyo. Yeah, I was just there for like 8 days and it was a really nice time being back
Mm.
there. I have to say Tokyo is a very good city for like introverts.
Oh,
You can
really?
really just
Mm.
like not interact much with people and just get through your day and you can really live that very secluded life there. I mean, even though I had a good time during those 8 months when I lived there, like I don't think I could ever really like live there again. It's
Mm.
definitely a really quite difficult and just I mean, I don't want to say just overly bizarre because I think that that's also kind of a like I suppose like a stereotype of like that city. People just always say, "Oh, it's such a weird place." But I
Mm.
think just um I guess socially there's so many different hierarchies there that seem kind of beyond my understanding because I didn't grow up there.
Right, right.
Um and so yeah, like I have to say the one thing I felt the most consistently when I lived there was I just felt like I was being rude 24/7 and no one would tell me what I was doing wrong. They just don't tell you. You have to guess.
You have
And
to
I really
guess,
don't
yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's just like very, very tense all the time. Or I feel like I have to, oh, I'm sitting a bit too close to this lady. Maybe I should move a bit. Or, oh, my headphones too loud. Oh, I shouldn't be that loud. So yeah, that was what I felt a lot when I was living there.
Yeah, I'm living more like Inaka, more like country-ish, but it's not like
Oh,
it's
okay.
yeah, I'm in central Japan near in the Kansai area. So I
Hmm.
guess when you visit, you just stayed in the Tokyo area.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
mostly in Tokyo.
Yeah.
I did visit like Osaka a few times. I really like Osaka people because
Yeah.
they're really like a hoot. They're very, very laid
Yeah.
back, and then you also can't really understand what they're saying most of the time. Um, but they remind me a lot of Hong Kong people in a way. Like
Ah.
Hong Kong people are also, I have to say, like, I really like the Hong Kong character. Like, I think Hong Kong
Mm,
people are also, they're very direct, which I personally really like because I'm also quite direct.
mm,
But they're also like, in a way, they can also be very laid back, but also work very hard. So like Hong Kong people are like kind of just like a character, I feel.
mm.
And I really, really am drawn to that type of like person, like Hong Kong people in general. But yeah, so Osaka people remind me a lot of Hong Kong people for sure.
Right. Yeah, that directness. I mean, if you come to Japan, you're like, welcome to the indirect country, right?
Yeah, 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 100%. Right, right. That's so
Yeah.
true.
I'm
Yeah.
living here. My fiance, she's Japanese, and she tells
Hmm.
me because we're gonna get married, so she tells me directly sometimes. It's been better, but like before starting out was like indirect, like, oh, what am I doing wrong? But then now it's been a little bit more direct, like simple stuff like, oh, lift up the toilet seat, stuff like that, simple stuff like that. Or
But that's good though that like that port of communication is opening up because so my cousin who's Taiwanese married a Japanese man and the two of them have two kids now. And so like during the course of their relationship and now their marriage, like I think I remember like my cousin also kind of talking to me about like, yeah, the kind of indirectness that she would experience, maybe not always in a relationship, but also just living there.
uh,
And that being very difficult. And so yeah, I can relate to what you're saying and like I can
mm.
sympathize with that. It's really hard, but I mean you make it work, right?
You
And
make
you
it
like
work, yeah. And what's weird is we
yeah.
speak Mandarin to each other because my Japanese is not that
Oh,
good.
my
Yeah.
cousin and her husband do the same thing.
Oh,
He also
really?
speaks Mandarin. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh,
He
wow.
speaks very good Mandarin actually. So yeah, like they speak English and a lot of Mandarin too.
Oh.
So that's cool. Oh,
Yeah,他他
similarity
的他
there.
的英文不好意思，有一点不行啊，所以我跟他
不行啊。
对，所以我跟他讲中文了，对。So I speak Mandarin because like her
哦，
English level is
不太好。
struggling 不太好. It's not the great. It's not good. Yeah, yeah. And she admits it.
哦，
Yeah. I mean,
没
yeah.
问
You
题。
found that probably living here when in Japan the English level is like it's below Taiwan. It's definitely below Hong Kong.
嗯。
Yeah, yeah.
对
Oh,
对对，真的，
对对
哦哦哦，I see I see。那
对。
他是什么时候学中文呢？
他是去年学哦，sorry listeners, we're gonna speak Mandarin 就是他是去年我们在台湾认识的，对，所以我们在台，因为
哦，
他
在台湾哦，
对对，
哦
我们在台湾认识的，然后他
哦，
后来他有回去日本，然后我自己在日本有找到一个工作，教英文的工作，所以刚
嗯，
好我们可以一起在日本生活，对
哦
，yeah
，that's
yeah。
nice，真的。那你们想要在日本住吗？还是在台湾？还是在美国？
可能，这先试试看住日本. Yeah, I think maybe
嗯
Japan, but I do wonder about that sort of like cultural disconnect of like, but I've been living here for like a year and a half already, so I
嗯
think I'm getting used to it. But yeah, I do want
嗯
to. I'm going to go back to the States this year again, just to keep that connection with like at least the Asian American community. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I think but no, there are things about Japan I like a lot too though. 我还是对啊 yeah 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 this
Yeah,
很
yeah,
很
yeah.
方便啊，对啊，
很方便. And then also
Yeah.
like the family unit is very, very like emphasized in Japan as well. I will say like actually a lot of my friends in, well, mostly in Tokyo, but a lot of my friends in Japan, like most of them had the kind of upbringing where so they grew up in Japan, but then for a period of time in their life they then moved to either America or the UK for like 5-6 years tops, just to get like that basic language and also kind of some exposure to different cultures, and then they moved back to Tokyo later on in their life. And like they found, actually a lot of friends had that happen in their lives, and I can see that have been like very kind of beneficial in terms of really opening their eyes to like seeing how the rest of the world kind of functions, which I feel when you're in Japan you're very, very, very disconnected from that. You get very, very easily kind of like caught up in like what's very localized. I don't know.
Right.
So I mean that's something that like if you plan to have like a family later, that's definitely something that you could do.
Consider yeah.
Yeah,
对，我
yeah.
说错，不是去年，是前年，2021年我去，就是那个新冠
Oh,
肺
okay,
炎的
okay,
时
okay.
候，就是那个 pandemic 的时候，就回去台湾，
Oh,
就觉得啊，美国我不要，我要休息，我要去别的，我要住台湾
我也
一下，对对
是一样，我也
对啊，
是一样，对对对，我
对对，因
懂。
为那时候美国就有一点紧张吧，对啊对啊对啊，
很困难
呀，
住在那边，我觉得真的。还有你生病的话，真的很，哇，很恐
很
怖。所
恐怖啊，
以，
对啊。
对对对对对，我真的觉得你，when you take a break, it's very, very important, I think, from
Yeah, and I
US.
met my fiance, so it was a win-win. Yeah.
Yay, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one last thing, like, you probably get
Yes.
this a lot, given like, your background of like different like, German, Taiwanese, but in Hong Kong. So like, but it sounds like you found your home in Hong Kong. As far as um like identity, I like was identity ever like a thing growing up, like were people like, hey, you don't really look like Chinese or stuff like that, or how has that played a part in your life, and where have you come to terms maybe with what your identity? We've had like other like, I guess hafu is like term in Japanese, I guess, mixed people with mixed backgrounds, and I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that. It's probably something you've thought about or you've come across maybe, you know.
Yeah, I mean, identity has always played a very, very big part in my life and has always been kind of a, I don't want to say necessarily an obstacle, but it's always been kind of a difficult point of kind of, yeah, like reflection and just thinking about who I am and what I like represent, I suppose. Growing up, I mean, from young, like a really young age, I was already made aware of my kind of my race or just my ethnicity in general. And I always kind of wondered like, oh, where do I really, belong? Am I for the longest time had wanted to leave Hong Kong for very long times. I just felt like, oh, this place is not suitable for me at all. No one understands me. I guess if I move to America, people will understand me. Not the case at all. But I mean, I have to say, like, this kind of like very like this confusion about my identity has been something that plagued me for a long time, I will say. But I think like at the heart, I definitely feel very, very like Chinese. I feel very Asian, I guess. Just having grown up here, and also I think a lot of my values are very tied to very Chinese values as well. And then going back to Hong Kong really reiterated that for me. But at the same time, I will say that like there are a lot of ideals sort of in Asian culture that I do not agree with and I don't like. Like, for example, being very indirect, especially with family. Like in family, like you don't really tell people everything, or you're not very upfront about your feelings. You just have to keep it to yourself for the good of the family unit. There are aspects of that I don't like. And so being in America and also having that sort of German side of me was like, it gives me kind of an escape from that. And so at this point, being in Hong Kong, and also I have to say most of my friends predominantly being Cantonese people, I feel like and also Cantonese people who don't make me feel othered. They don't make me feel like I don't understand, or they don't make me feel like I am just like a foreign person who doesn't get it. Like, I think having that kind of community around me also really helps with just like accepting that, okay, maybe I'm this kind of more culturally ambiguous person, but because I'm older, I can identify what values are important to me and what types of things I can accept from people and what I cannot accept. With that being said, though, I will say that being a white person, like I've definitely benefited from a lot of privilege, especially in Hong Kong. I actually remember some years ago, I had a conversation with my brother about like, so you know how when the Black Lives Matter protests were taking place, I remember hearing a lot of stories about like friends telling me when they were made aware of their race. And a lot of the time, like in the stories from friends, at least, they would mention that there was always like a third party or someone outside of their immediate community that would make a comment or something that make them very aware that like, oh, I'm not like, I'm Black, like I'm a Black person, like I am of a different race than this person. And when I would hear these stories, I would feel very fascinated by them because in my case, my own family made me very, very aware of it, but from kind of a weird angle. Like I'd always hear, because in Taiwan and Hong Kong also, actually in quite a lot of Southeast Asian countries, I have to say, if you are like of white descent or Caucasian descent, like you're considered like you will have more benefits in your life, or like you will have a leg up on a lot of different things more than the average Asian person. So I would have my own family tell me things like, oh, because she's like a mixed kid, she can be, you know, like a model, or she can go live in like so many different countries, or she will just have more opportunities than the average Asian person. And as a kid, I didn't really think much of that. But growing up, I've like really reflected on how actually like that kind of like white privilege was already kind of presented to me from such a young age. Like even in Hong Kong, if I don't have a mask on at certain points, like I'm probably not going to get fined. But if a cop like confronts one of my Hong Kong friends, like my Cantonese friends, they're probably going to get a ticket over me.
Oh, what?
So
Okay.
yeah, like there's still there's a lot of like kind of aspects of my life where my privilege definitely, like as a half white person, like gives me like more, I guess, like a peace of mind over certain things, especially with how kind of authoritarian the government has become. Like there are a lot of things that I don't really have to worry too much about, but let's say my local friends have to worry about. Like I've known a lot of friends who have been arrested during the protests, and who still kind of fear for like what's going to happen to them because they're still like waiting for a trial.
Oh,
And
geez.
so yeah, like with that being said, I've made peace with my identity, but I also like constantly try to remind myself that like there is not a level playing field here. Like I have a lot more benefits than my friends, for example. And so I have to make sure that like I keep that in check. And I also do what I can to like help my friends who don't have those benefits. Um, so yeah, that's something I still feel very, very strongly, even having left America.
Yeah.
I feel maybe stronger being in Hong Kong, actually. Yeah.
Right. Because it's interesting. I mean, in America, then your experience was probably different because then your Asianness is more, I guess, was it more exotic, I guess, in America,
Yeah, or
right?
just
Yeah.
more accentuated. Yeah, I had like just, I mean, speaking back to the satellite show and that past relationship, I'll never forget, like, there was a kind of racist, like a sort of microaggression that took place in my past relationships, like friend group. And the conclusion to that was not really an apology, but just, oh, Kelly's not from here, so she can feel however way she wants to. And I'll never forget that, because it just felt like, even though I've kind of trained myself to be sort of able to live in American society, I suppose, I'm still othered. Like, I'm still not really like a part of the, well, I'm not like fully white, so there's still some things that I can't really like be too connected to, or there's something that I just don't understand, also having not grown up there. So yeah, like I felt almost a kind of, almost like an imposter when I was living in the US. So that's why, like, having sort of more experiences with the Asian American community was like really, really eye-opening. And that, like, the Taiwanese American Film Festival, like, that was such a like soulful and like great experience, because I was like meeting other people who were Taiwanese but also had like kind of a like Western, shall we say, background as well, like being in America. And so like, even though in America was a bit like with my identity being a bit more kind of out of whack, I suppose, but there were still a lot of communities there that felt very like I had a good connection to, like at TAF and a few other friends that I've made in the US. But yeah, kind of a mixed bag when it comes
I
to
mean,
my
that's
identity.
life, right?
That's live, yeah, it's
That's
true.
life. It's a mixed
Yeah.
bag.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, to wrap things up, we don't have to go too in depth to it, but like, how is the situation in Hong Kong right now as far as like free speech, and is that something you can talk about, or maybe that's another whole podcast? Or
It is, but I'll give like a little kind of glimpse on it. So I mean, it is getting worse, to be honest. But it's getting worse more like behind the shadows, I suppose. Like, so from a kind of like current event standpoint, a lot more protesters who were previously arrested and were awaiting their trial for years are now finally being sentenced. So a lot of that is happening. And there's just a lot of like small bureaucratic changes that are being made. I guess like one thing, just as an example, is I think on most government websites, like the Chinese like the mainland government logo is now included on a lot of like government websites. Previously it was not. It's like a small thing, but that and quite a lot of other kind of current event things have taken place in the last year and a bit, especially because of the COVID lockdown. With that being said, though, I think that more so because people don't know, I think that like people who look at a place like Hong Kong have this like kind of, perhaps they have this kind of like standpoint of, oh, it must be completely impossible to live a free life in Hong Kong. That's totally not the case. You
American
still
media likes
see,
to push that narrative.
yeah. Or I mean, just like it's sort of like it's an unwanted response to like just basic journalism trying to speak on specifics to like systemic issues that are in place. But of course, like, I mean, if anyone hears about there being systemic like inequalities in a place that they don't know anything about, that's maybe the first thing that they just think about when they think about that country, if that makes any sense. In Hong Kong, like, you still get a lot of, let's say, art shows where, I mean, it's featuring a lot of like protest art. You still see a lot of places where you can see kind of like and talk to people about the history of the protests and what happened. For example, there are a lot of shops in Hong Kong where if they have sympathy towards protesters, or just like their yellow shops, for example, they'll have like a little, like a figurine of one of the protest symbols in their store, or like a
Oh,
sticker or something to kind of say like, we're in solidarity with protests. A lot of stores have that. Now the police are like slowly kind of going around to different shops and like arresting them for it, but it's
oh,
happening
geez.
that's happening very slowly. People are also not stupid. Like people are like finding ways to like show their solidarity in their daily life, even though protesting strictly is illegal now.
Ah,
People are still able to, you know, show their support in their own way, just maybe not at the same scale as it used to be. So
mm,
you're still able to live a semi free life in Hong Kong, just as long as you're very, very careful and as long as you don't get arrested. So yeah,
yeah.
it's gone worse, but it's still like you can still live a good life there, I think.
I guess you have to be savvy about it. But there's still maybe more freedoms in comparison to probably like mainland China, possibly, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Or it's just like people are not as on edge perhaps
Ah,
in the mainland, or at least from what my friends tell me, because I mean that's the mainland, whereas in Hong Kong it's like there's special surveillance that is like taking place in Hong Kong because
ah,
of the protests and because like we don't want that to happen again, so we're going to pay extra attention to make sure it doesn't happen again. um
geez.
yeah, yeah, so but it's all right. You still, like I said, you'll still see a lot of like solidarity and like expressions of that in your daily life. You'll still see it.
Yeah, I mean, Taiwan, when I was visiting Taiwan, I think it was during the protests, the Hong Kong protests, and it was like 今天香港明日台湾, right? Like,
Mm-mm.
yeah, they would
I
say
still
like
see
like
stickers of that in certain shops in Taiwan.
today
Yeah,
Hong
yeah,
Kong,
yeah.
tomorrow Taiwan. Yeah. And so I think Taiwanese people in general, I from my feeling is they're in solidarity with Hong Kong. They support Hong Kong for the protests. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, let's wrap it up. I guess we have two questions we usually wrap up with. First,
Yeah.
what's something that keeps you balanced? We're called the yin and yang, kind of like play of yin and yang, right? So like,
Yeah.
so Young's my middle name. Yin is
Okay.
Dan's last name. Yeah. So, what's
Oh.
something that keeps you balanced, like yin and yang? Like, what helps you stay like fairly, like you're not going over the edge. You're staying, like, oh, yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, I suppose like family, right? And like having
Uh,
a close relationship to family is very, very important. Like even before I was here, like I call my mom every day, even if it's just for
oh
5
wow.
minutes, just to, yeah, I mean, just, like just to hash it out, just to like hear like, oh, what are you doing today? Oh, I have a class. Okay, bye, bye. Just to, like keep the flow of communication going, I think is important. Just let them know you're okay. So having family and being actively close to family has definitely helps keep my yin and yang balance
Oh, okay.
in my life. Yeah,
That's
consistently.
good. And you
Hmm.
talk with your dad fairly often too?
Yeah, I mean, we actually live in the same house in Hong
Oh,
Kong.
okay.
So yeah, it's like I'll see him at home either way. So it's nice, I think, yeah, to have that kind of closeness, definitely.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
And then language corner. I think we've already mentioned a couple cool words like hobak wa, and then
Mm.
yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of what Cantonese phrases do I know. I mean, I know mgoi sai, right?
Goza is like a thank you, right?
Thank
But
you.
so
Yeah.
there's two different ways to say thank you in Cantonese. There's 多謝 and then there's 唔該晒. 多謝
Ah,
is like when you receive gift or when you receive money,
yeah.
even if like let's say you're a taxi driver and then you just receive your fare, you say
Yeah.
多謝 because you're receiving like
Ah,
goods, you're
dote.
receiving money. So 唔該 is like 唔該晒 is like sort of like a more like a general thank you, but
Ah,
also
general thing.
唔該 is like a Like mgoy is kind of like excuse me. So the mgoy of mgoy sai. Like if you're gonna order something in a restaurant, you go, oh mgoy, and you ask for a like waitress to come and serve you.
Okay.
Yeah, mgoy. Yeah. Or actually, you can even say it to people as a thank you as well, like as a shortened version of mgoy sai. Mgoy, thank you,
Mgoy.
mgoy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Any cool phrases you've learned in any languages that you've liked recently?
Cool phrases.
Taiwanese, Cantonese, Mandarin, or
I
English,
think okay, going off
German.
of what my mom said, like like the way she would like talk to me and my brother.
Yeah.
So there was also another thing she used to call us, which is banjing baliang, which is like tweedledee tweedledum. Have you heard that
Ah,
before?
I think Pangji. Okay, I'll look it up. Yeah, so it's like Tweedledee Tweedledum. Okay.
Yeah, kind of banjing baliang is just like you two silly people. I don't know, but
I
she
don't
would
think I've
call us
heard
that
that.
all.
Oh, I learned something new. Okay, Pangji.
Yeah. It's like Tweedledee Tweedledum. It specifically works well for when you have two kids. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Mm,
Cool. For
yeah.
anyone that wants to check out your work, what's the best place? Instagram, or what do you want to plug? Anything? Yeah.
I guess my website has been not working for a while, so I guess
Ah,
my IG is the best place to go. My IG is, as you mentioned, Herbie Stripes, which is Herby, and then stripes, just like a zebra has stripes, STRIP. Yes.
check it out.
Yeah.
We'll have it linked below. And then what's anything coming out soon? Anything you're working on?
So, I mean, I think that at the moment I'm working on another book project, specifically like a self-portraiture project, but that I think
Oh,
I want to really take my time with that. I might need another like year or so to complete that. But I think most of the projects that I'll be working on are at the moment just a lot of small personal shoots, but also just a lot of small kind of non-photography related projects to do with the space. So one
okay.
sneak peek I can give you, just it's more like a community project, is do you know Colombian coffee carts? Have you seen them before?
Not really, no. Are they cute?
So, I mean, they're just like, yeah, I guess they're kind of cute. They're just like these guys with like different kinds of coffee, and they have a little cart and they go around the neighborhood and they sell coffee. But the nice thing about it is like there's a certain photo I saw some time ago of like just all these neighbors just standing, hand in their pocket and like coffee and talking to their neighbors around the coffee cart. So
Oh,
that's a project that me and the studio are going to be working on, because I love just like classic just drip coffee, very
mm,
cheap but like very energizing coffee. And so I and my studio mates at the moment are planning on having a little kind of community coffee cart where it's cheap coffee and it's for nothing, but we go around our neighborhood with the coffee cart, offer coffee, and see if we can talk to our neighbors, and like meet them and kind of form kind of a closer bond with them, learn about their stories. And so that's an upcoming non-photography related studio project that I am currently working on, which is our coffee cart. Yeah.
that's awesome. It's like a community event, bring the community closer kind of activity, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, just come and
Yeah.
hang out, have a coffee, and just like also just really hear about the stories of the people who are in the same neighborhood as us. It's
Mm,
just a way for us to meet people, I guess, but with coffee. Yeah.
that's dope. Awesome. Well, thanks so
Mhm.
much, Kelly. This has been great. Mgoy,
Yeah.
mgoy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Guys, I thank you so much for your
Mgoy-san.
time, James. Take care,
Thank you so
huh?
much for your time. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Take
take care of
care.
yourself.
Bye.
Bye.